Saladin has brought two weapons to Iron Banner in episode Heresy: the brand new Warlord Spear Arc Trace Rifle and the Stasis Sidearm Peacebond with an updated perk pool. While trace rifles and sidearms are an acquired taste in both PvE and PvP, they do put in the work by being at the top of the charts for minor and major DPS. And these two weapons also have excellent PvE perks, with Warlord Spear having the brand new Detonator Beam perk, Jolting Feedback, and many more. Both of these weapons act as accessible, and in some cases better, alternatives of endgame weapons, most comparable to Liminal Vigil and Unsworn. So let's go over both of the weapons and what perks you should chase. But before we begin, let's recap how you get them. Iron Banner is back to being a 1-week event that will occur several times over the course of Heresy. You have a random chance of getting these weapons, or any Iron Banner loot, upon match completion, and can directly focus them at Saladin for 1 Iron Banner engram. To be able to focus them, you must have obtained them first. Most straightforward path is through his reputation rank up rewards. Rank 4 rewards Warlord Spear. Rank 7 is Peacebond. It's also worth noting, at the time of writing, the role Saladin is offering at rank 4 has Detonator Beam, which I think is a worthwhile perk, as you will see. Normally, these set roles only update on the weekly reset, but last episode they did update on Friday, in addition to other vendors not updating correctly. So if you want this role, play a few games of Iron Banner before Friday. To get more drops, you want to farm Iron Banner Rep to get more engrams. So make sure you max out your Iron Banner Reputation multiplier, viewable in the modifier list when you queue Iron Banner. Equip an Iron Banner emblem, armor ornaments, weapons, and complete the Reputation weekly challenges that unlock once a day, Tuesday through Friday. Now onto the weapons. Warlord Spear, the Arc-adapted trace rifle, has two interesting perks in column 4 that set it apart from other traces. Those are the newly added Detonator Beam perk, which is currently only found on it and Unsworn from the Sunder Doctrine dungeon, and Jolting Feedback, which is also found on only a few weapons since it debuted in episode Revenant. Both of these perks act as a single target perk and a splash damage perk that don't require a kill, specifically handy for a large group of adds and beefier targets. They also don't require you to main the weapon, like Killing Tally or Target Lock. Yes, trace rifles are pseudo-primary weapons, but forcing you to not swap weapons or to keep laser accuracy for a minor damage buff don't seem like great options. So how good are these new perks? For Detonator Beam, you activate it by scoring 25 hits in a short amount of time. From my testing, it is similar to how the Navigator's perk functions, requiring a set amount of hits within 1 second of each to progress the counter. I unfortunately lack the precision to get an exact time value, but for my testing, these two seem to be equatable. Simply put, as long as you're hitting a target every second, once you have reached 25 hits, on the 25th hit the explosion will go off. This explosion deals moderate AoE damage and can stagger enemies, seen here as I bully this Lost Sector boss, quote unquote. Because this requires you to constantly fire the weapon and hit your shots, the perk is more closely related to Cold Heart and Target Lock, but not to an extreme degree. It's okay to miss several shots and it only takes 25 hits to proc, 20 when enhanced. That's only firing for about a second. Looking at Jolting Feedback, the perk progresses on a similar counter system. From my testing, the 19th shot is what applies Jolt to the target. When amplified, this is reduced to around 15. Once jolted, you'll have to keep damaging them to trigger the damage, which then hits all enemies within 8 meters. Since the damage doesn't auto-trigger on jolt application, and due to the damage threshold required, it'll take a few more shots to trigger, or you could hit the target with any source of damage. Now comparing the base damage potential of each perk, we see that values for each listed in the data compendium are up to 266 for Detonator Beam and 132 for Jolt. To give that perspective, on this Legendary Witch Queen campaign boss, Warlord Spear does 801 damage to the crit, 596 to the body. Detonator Beam does a max of 5,164 damage. Jolt does 2,913. Using a 100 shot mag as an example, this should trigger Enhanced Detonator Beam and the Jolt effect 5 times by only using this trace rifle. The resulting total damage increase over just using the trace rifle will be 43% on body and 32% on crit for Detonator Beam, 24% on body and 18% on crit for Jolting Feedback. Expanding to other damage perks on Warlord Spear, you have Desperate Measures and Killing Tally, which both cap out at 30% after getting the necessary kills, and Target Lock, whose buff is quite misleading. Ignoring the fact that you cannot miss or stop firing, it takes time for the damage to ramp up. Over the base mag, you'll get an average of a 25% overall damage increase. If you extend or overfill the mag with Envious Assassin or Rewind rounds, which are also found on this weapon, that overall buff can reach up to 39%. But by just firing 20 shots with Enhanced Detonator Beam, you've beaten all the perks in terms of damage and did so without getting other kills or firing hundreds of shots constantly. This best highlights where to use this perk and weapon. Against elite enemies and lower. It's not a boss DPS weapon. Use it to quickly kill the red bars and now more easily attack and stagger those common elite enemies, those tanky gladiators. In short, if you're going with a damage perk, go with either Detonator Beam or Jolting Feedback, because they are both great at single target damage and AoE ad clear. Personally, I'd get both. Both deal AoE damage, but Jolt lingers on a target. If you're aware of this, you could target a nearby elite or mini-boss that will stay alive, apply Jolt, and now it'll continue to damage itself and nearby enemies. Lower damage per impulse, but potentially greater overall damage depending on the group of enemies. Plus, this also synergizes with the Arc subclass and stuns Overload champions. If you just prefer raw damage and less waste of a perk activation, go with Detonator Beam. Explosion goes off, high damage, and you don't have to worry about that jolted target, either them dying the moment you apply Jolt, or keep having to deal damage to them to trigger it. Plus, these perks are what make this trace unique. Plenty others have Killing Tally, Target Lock, etc. Alright, that was a lot. What about column 3 perks and the God Roll? For column 3, plenty will want Envious Assassin because you'll get a crazy huge mag. But if a Trace Rifle is supposed to act as your primary weapon, why would you get kills with other weapons to charge it up? It should be the opposite. Which is the reason why we like Envious Assassin on our high damage specials and heavy weapons. Me personally, I'd go with Rewind rounds to extend your mag, or high impact reserves to further increase your total damage. It's not a huge damage buff, but you also rarely see it in the left column to be able to pair it with another damage perk. Honorable mention goes to Loose Change if you're using a lot of debuffs and Jolting Feedback, but you could also just spec into the reload stat elsewhere on the weapon. For my God Roll, Rewind rounds and high impact reserves with either Detonator Beam or Jolting Feedback. Perks that I think are a waste in my opinion are Envious Assassin and 4th Time's the Charm. Now, how about that reprised Peacebond? Don't worry, this section will be much shorter, as we don't have brand new perks, just new perks to this weapon. In column 3, Headstone is the standout PvE perk if you can get it to proc. This being a burst weapon, sometimes having the last hit being a crit can be difficult. But if you can manage that, now you have a Stasis Crystal. Not the most glamorous subclass effect, but it is potent. Provides cover, slows and freezes nearby enemies, can be destroyed for a mild damaging explosion, and synergizes with the Stasis subclass. The only other option is Subsistence to extend your mag, but that's only useful if you're getting a lot of kills. In column 4, you have the pick of the litter. Rhyme Stealer synergizes with Headstone, whereby destroying any Stasis Crystal with the weapon will give you 1 stack of Frost Armor, 2 when enhanced. And in Heresy, Frost Armor got a buff, granting 6.25% damage resistance per stack. So crit kill an enemy, shatter the crystal, and now you have 13% DR for 9 seconds. You then have Desperate Measures if you have a more ability damage centered build, Kill Clip if weapon kills are the priority, or Frenzy if the goal is just to stay in combat. 15% damage buff, plus max handling and reload. What has me most excited about this weapon is that it is an easier to get, and arguably superior, alternative to Liminal Vigil, the stasis heavy burst sidearm from Spire of the Watcher. Origin Trade is better, as they recently updated Skulking Wolf to function in PvE by reducing combatant targeting accuracy against you, and Frenzy helps solve the poor reload speed on a weapon you are going to be reloading quite often. For my God Roll, go with Headstone in either Rhyme Stealer or Frenzy. The choice is dependent on your playstyle. Are there a lot of Stasis Crystals you will be actively destroying with this weapon, or would you just rather have a simple damage perk that juices your stats? And speaking of which, spec more into range and mag size if you can. If you go with Rhyme Stealer instead of Frenzy, I highly recommend Alloy Magazine in column 2. Since it is a reload duration multiplier, it has a greater benefit to reload speed than trying to increase the reload stat elsewhere. And that's your guide to the new Iron Banner weapons. All in all, an odd bunch, but quite worth grabbing. At the very least, get that free Detonator Beam Warlord Spear while you can. If you have any other questions or if your God rolls differ, sound off in the comments. Remember to like this video if you found it useful, subscribe if you haven't already, and come check out the Sundog Gaming Discord if you want to play with other Guardians. As always, I am your Commander Pika. Be kind, have fun, and I'll see you on the battlefield.